Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service. Nisswa Tax Service offers tax preparation for individuals and businesses across from City Hall in Nisswa and on the web at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Lakeland Currents, where tonight we're going to be talking about minimum invasive surgery. Doesn't sound like there really is such a thing, but there is such a thing. My guest this evening is Dr. Leo Cho, who is with the Minnesota Institute for Minimum Invasive Surgery. That's a mouthful to say without goofing it up.
Yes, exactly. Right.
But welcome to Lakeland Currents. It's nice to have you on board.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about your background. What you do? How'd you get into this kind of work?
Well, I've been in this area since 2000, and I joined a partner of mine that we trained together in St. Louis. I'm originally from Washington State, but I found this to be a very vibrant area with a lot of growth potential, and we've certainly seen that in at least 2 or 3 expansions at the hospital, and now being present in Baxter as well. So I did the general orthopedic training, as most would, and specialized in sports medicine. But this community, I think, unfortunately has a lot of prevalence of arthritis, and so all of us, I think, are treating a fair amount of arthritis. And that's sort of the focus of our topic today, is this rapid recovery concept of how do you surgically manage arthritis if it comes to that, and hope that people can actually recover well with less of the pain.
You know, when I think about it, in my era, when I knew my grandparents, hardly anybody had surgery on bad hips or knees or feet. They just sort of lived with it, didn't they? I mean, they had crutches and canes and wheelchairs.
Yeah.
And now the number of people having surgery is just amazing to me.
That's definitely a trend, although most of us in the office will talk to everyone about the non-operative care as well. That's important too, because
your first line of defense.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There's really nothing created like the natural joint, and if it can be preserved in a pretty reasonable way, it's not a bad way to go. Whether it be medications, and there's some injections available, sometimes bracing therapy. There's a whole rigmarole of things you could try, and unfortunately, failing all that may lead some people to decide that surgery is the pathway they need to go. But this is, I think, what we're hoping that people have less fear for, and actually something that they might look forward to undergoing well, less pain, faster recovery, and great outcome.
Now, the Minnesota Institute for Minimally Invasive Surgery is a part of the Cuyuna Medical Regional Center, correct?
Yes, that actually encompasses a lot of our colleagues in general surgery. We also have a brand name, if you want to call it that, the Minnesota Center for Orthopedics, or MCO. And that really focuses on our 2 surgeons, Dr. Eric Severson and myself, and our entire staff there, and the products that we bring in orthopedics. Our colleagues in general surgery primarily are the ones with the MIMIS, or Minnesota Institute for Minimally Invasive Surgery, also running great programs as well there.
Now, you said you've been there since about 2000, so you've been there about 14 years now.
Right.
You've seen a tremendous growth, at least in your hospital, and have also been in the Brainerd area, in the Staples area. I think through this central Minnesota, there's been some real growth in this area. How wide of an area do you service?
Well, actually, the radius, they say, might extend 50 miles in a circle if we can consider Crosby the point of care, but a lot of our clientele do come from the Brainerd area and have historically done so, and just this past year we had come into Baxter, making it a little bit more convenient for folks to see us in that arena as well. But right now our surgical procedures are based in Crosby, and we are also affiliated with the Riverwood Healthcare Center in Aiken as well. So we're fortunate to have 2 great facilities to be affiliated with and be able to do our products with.
I'm a retired coach, coached for about 30 years, and I've often been curious to know, why are we seeing so many ACL injuries in the knees? It's just becoming a real common. Is that just from overuse, or what? Too much stress on it? What's happening there, do you think?
Well, with that particular injury, I think most times it's just the unfortunate set of circumstances. Unfortunately, that is part of sports, is injury. But now we're paying more attention to the preventative care of things, and if we can kind of condition athletes in a way and be a little bit more anticipative of things, maybe we'll have a decrease of that. But I don't think so. I think more and more people are involved with sports. That sometimes can lead the entire pathway, an ACL injury as a young individual. Maybe through the years it becomes degenerative, as we say, and lands fully and square into the land of arthritis, bringing us full front to the kinds of things we're treating now.
So what's different now about how you're doing your surgeries than it was 10 years ago?
You know, the interesting thing is, arguably, you could say the surgery is exactly the same. I think for a while there was a focus on incisions being as small as possible, concepts of sparing muscles, and I think that can play a role and help. But it's not really a necessary ingredient. I think the concept of what we're doing now says if you do surgery in a considered standard way, bigger incision, if we can treat the individual in a number of different ways, medically and with a team of individuals we have in all of the different areas, the outcome can be the same, if not better, and we've seen that over time. People for joint replacements are routinely leaving in a single day, and some leaving the same day.
Wow, that's incredible. I do know, I have some other friends who are orthopedic surgeons, and I do know that there was this trend for a while to have really small incisions. In fact, I've seen people with hip replacements, and it's just unreal how small the incisions are. But you're saying really that technology inside is still the same, and the focus was more on how big to make the hole to get in there and do the work.
Yeah, there's no doubt that was a focus and a trend really across the nation. And I think as they watched and how people did, it didn't necessarily provide a better outcome defined by faster recovery or longer standing implant lifespan. But maybe in some sense the individual would be a little bit more proud to have the smaller incision. But I think if we look at joint replacement surgery, it's really functional surgery. You want to have those things in there as good as you can. But along the way, if the recovery goes smoothly with less pain, why not?
So when we're talking joint replacement, now you're talking ankles?
Yeah, the ankle is one of the joints replaced. I think by and large, the hip and the knee are by far the two most common, and probably a distant third would be the shoulder. But just about any joint of the body you could imagine actually has been replaced and is being replaced. Ankle is there, elbow is there, there's some wrist replacements, there's some work in the fingers and hand as well. But by and large, it's the hip and the knee, and that makes sense because we're weight-bearing individuals and they typically see the stress of us walking daily.
So what determines when you have a patient come in? Let's say you have a patient who is suffering from arthritis. What determines whether you decide to do the surgery or not? Is just kind of their level of pain, or?
Yeah, I think obviously we want to start at the beginning and understand what road the individual has traveled already. So for how long have things been there? How exactly is it bothering them now? But there's no doubt that pain is probably the biggest factor that we want to try to eliminate, and a very close number two, or maybe an equal number one, is the function. So if you're functioning poorly and the desire to want to keep being active, as many of us still do, well into our 70s and 80s, try and find a way to make that happen. And again, first line of defense would always be non-operative. Understand if they've tried some medications. Some people would argue to say weight loss can be of some help there, exercise and therapeutic programs, injections of course, and then if that all fails, we may first begin to discuss what surgery might do to help that individual.
Now, luckily I've got some pretty good knees, I think, so yeah. I'm not asking for myself. But when you do replace a knee, typically, how far down and how high up above to the actual joint do you actually make your, I guess you break it, don't you, basically?
Well, it's a little more controlled than that, but just for me it's about landmarks. So if someone stood 6'10" as an example, it's a longer leg, the landmarks are a little bit different dimension than someone of shorter size. But for me, it's somewhere around the top of the kneecap, coming straight down in front, and then most of us have a little bit of a bump on the front of our shin bone. That's another landmark, so we're somewhere in the neighborhood of those landmarks. From there, again, if you go a little higher, a little bit lower, extend the incision, it really doesn't make that much difference, but that kind of gives us the working avenue to do what we need to do and to do our best job.
So what is the kind of material that most of your knee replacements are made of today?
Simplistically, we break it down into the metals and plastics that we have, and there are certain types of metals certain companies use, and maybe some of us as surgeons we favor as well. And use the plastic term kind of loosely. It's not your Tupperware plastic, of course. It's a very high compression molded, very durable plastic. I refer to it as space age plastic, because obviously you want to have these things last as long as possible. So if we look at 15-year data for most people's implants, we're easily looking at 90+% success rate, at least that far. More and more we're going to see 20, 25, 30-year survivorships. Wow. And more of the companies are coming out with new technology, new implants as well. So we're experiencing some of that now with some of the larger companies.
I know I have a friend who was in the auto industry and doing a lot of work with carbon fiber. And he said that this stuff is so much stronger than steel, it's hard to imagine. So that new high-tech stuff is getting into our bodies. And when you, how do you actually fuse the bone with this material? I guess I've never understood that.
That's the age-old question. One more additive to your question of materials, I think ceramics are coming into favor, and they've been around for a while, but whether it relates to the hip and slowly working its way toward the knee, wondering what does that material have to do with perhaps being of less wear compared to these plastics I talked about. But to your point, as far as getting those things in there and actually having them fixed, the hip has a certain style, I think many of us favor as surgeons, where we take these metals and ask that the biology of the body, the bone, grow to the metal and make it fuse for as long as possible, if not for life. The knee, if you had to pick probably a party line favorite, we use this bonding material, generically called cement, polymethyl methacrylate, that sort of literally bonds the metal to the bone, and then hopefully it stays well fixed for life.
Wow. So you really are the bionic man when you have that.
Right, that is exactly right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, are ankles, you said they're not as common, obviously, as knees and hips, but are ankle surgeries trickier?
Yes, I think that has been historically why the early versions of ankle replacement maybe didn't do so well. There's so much movement an ankle has, it's hard to capture everything in one implant. And so if there was failure early on, it was probably the fact, to your point, these metals weren't staying bonded to bone and the plastics were probably wearing a little bit earlier than not. But same thing, more research and science gives us better implants. But it's also arguable that the incidence and occurrence of our ankle arthritis is far less than, again, the hip and the knee, which are by far the top two.
Wow. I have a friend who just went through knee surgery, and he's having a real tough time. He's very athletic. He's very, not overweight at all, but very bow-legged. And I'm just wondering, is that shape of his legs causing him to maybe heal slower?
Well,
because of the way the muscles have been pulled in his legs? Or?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I would say that some of us, that's the alignment we're given, but it's common that arthritis creates those deformities, whether you're bow-legged, knees pointing outward, or knock-kneed, knees pointing inward. And we as surgeons, that's one of our goals, is to strive to create as close to what should be normal back in the day, perhaps when it was. And there's no doubt that there's an adjustment period. If someone's been walking bow-legged for a while, muscles are sort of used to that position. Now if they're corrected to what is normal, that's a new position for them. So maybe the rehab might be a little bit different, perhaps arguably longer. But we're all humans and different, so we're going to recover at different rates, even though the exact same surgery is performed every single time.
What are some of the things that, as surgeons, you prescribe to do preventive measures before these things have to happen?
Right. Some of the things that we mentioned a little bit before, but just to get a little bit more in detail, maybe the first line is something that you might take by pills because it's so readily available. And it's common things that we probably all have in our cabinets: Tylenol, aspirin, Aleve, ibuprofen. Now, of course, do so in conjunction with if your body is able to take that without the side effects we watch for. But assuming that works, it's easy to do, and if that's all it takes, it might buy some time before the process of arthritis worsens. And it's at that stage where you have to maybe get a little bit more involved. There's physical therapy programs or general programs of exercise, trying to keep the joints moving well, keeping the muscles in good condition. Sometimes you mentioned the bowing. There are braces that are designed to try and help keep that knee from feeling that bow and support it some. Not really shown to be as effective as some other treatments, but it's certainly there. But I think when the pain stays and the function is poor beyond everything we've talked about, there are some injections that we can give. Corticosteroids, or what people generically know as cortisones, are there. And then the other injectable, which is a gel material, some people call it the rooster comb shot, a visco supplement. They're all synonyms for a treatment basically made to relieve pain.
So do you think that diet plays a very big role? Do we know much more about arthritis today than we did 10 years ago?
You know, it's interesting because there's a whole branch in naturopathic medicine that will raise the question of exactly what you're talking about. Maybe diet really does play a role. You hear stories of people who are victims of cancer told by their traditional doctors to undergo chemotherapy, yet shun that, undergo a naturopathic diet, and somehow the cancer stays away. The concept of essential oils, for example, one wonders what role that plays. These are sort of, you might consider them to be non-traditional, but for me, I don't necessarily say no to anything. But there are definitely more than the traditional pathways one can try with really nothing to lose and maybe quite a bit to gain.
That's interesting. You mentioned essential oils. I don't know much about that, but I know people who do believe strongly in the medicinal effects of those. It seems to me that the younger doctors I work with are much more open to new ideas than maybe the old traditional doctors in their late 60s now. Do you get that more in medical school, in the more modern medical school? Are you looking at many more alternatives than what we would consider the traditional medicines?
You know, it's a great question that I'm not sure I know the answer. I think it just may somewhat be based on individual philosophy. Like, admittedly, I'm not an expert of essential oils by any definition, but I'm aware of it, and I'm certainly not one to just say no without knowing more about it. And I think for those as patients or doctors to want to know more, to look at that, it's an avenue to at least consider. So, but to your point, maybe so. I think that in medical schools we're trying to capture a little bit more broad-based education instead of the old dichotomy of this is the way it is and that's it. And maybe that even goes to the surgical aspect too. I mean, some of our old mentors, the stuff we were doing now probably wouldn't have ever dreamed it possible, and maybe don't even practice that now, but we're definitely seeing some positive things of what we're doing in today's language.
I've always been curious by looking at the Eastern cultures where they're sitting on the floor without chairs.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have as many hip-knee issues in their cultures as we do in the Western cultures?
You know, it is there, and that's interesting because one company in particular catered to that population, tried to make an implant that, in theory, would bend more than others. I'm not sure if they ever pulled that off, but they were at least aware of that and wanting to try to and capture again the population that might benefit. But yeah, unfortunately, by having great flexibility does not keep arthritis away. I think a lot of it is based on how life was lived, maybe somewhat what genetics play. It's not a purely genetic diagnosis necessarily so, but it's a combination of things that I think that bring you to the diagnosis of arthritis.
So tell us a few of the ways that you're getting people in surgery and out of the hospital the same day or the next day. What is it that you're doing differently now than it used to be done?
You know, I think this has been the concept for a while, but it's without question a team approach. And there's so many members to the team, from our anesthesia providers providing the key medications at the very beginning. If they get started on a different pathway, you might wake up from surgery, be very nauseous or even vomit and very ill of health, and it sort of sets the pattern of a very difficult one to overcome. So anesthesia is a very big part of that. In the hospital, you've got your nursing staff who are caring for them minute to minute, hour by hour, critically watching how are they doing. A natural response is at the first shake of pain is to throw traditional pain medications out there because that's seemingly what's right. But there are other ways that we can do that, still control pain, and maybe with less the side effect, and that's part of it. And I think another big part is physical therapy, because these are the people getting people up that same day. So you can have your surgery first of the morning, and you're up on your feet later that morning or early afternoon, possibly with a pathway going home that day, or if not, very likely the next day. So therapy is a big part of the process too.
That's incredible to me. I do have a friend who didn't follow rules after his surgery, and he never really healed, and never walked naturally again, as opposed to friends who followed their regimen and I can't tell they ever had the surgery.
Yeah, I really try to impress that surgery is no doubt a factor in how things go, but everyone has to put their own dedication to it too, perhaps in guidance with the physical therapist, and I think that's how you can maximize the best of all results.
So when you are working with seniors, you know, I don't know how we define seniors here, but anybody maybe over 60 years of age, do you reach some people where you think maybe they're at a high risk and they shouldn't even have surgery?
That's another great question. I think historically, perhaps we as surgeons, and maybe so because this is what we were taught, you had to be a certain age. I don't know if I ever heard a number on a calendar, but philosophically, maybe it was 70, maybe it was 60. But anyone younger, we almost felt like we were disservicing someone for a joint replacement that early because we were maybe not sure that the implant would last the rest of their natural life, especially as we as a population are living longer and longer. But because of some of the things we talked about, the implants being better, maybe the techniques being better, our ability to put these products in as close to perfect as you can enhances the likelihood that these things can last quite a long time. But it's really about the quality of life. So for someone literally suffering at age, whatever it might be, 30s, 40s, 50s, do you really want to subject them to what might be decades more of not that great of life when you know you might be able to help them surgically if they're ready for that, having gone through all the other pathways? More and more we're finding the younger individual having surgery. I have plenty of folks coming into the office in their 80s, and right away they say, I'm too old for surgery. But you look at them and they look like they're in their 60s and you know they're active. They arguably could be better candidates for surgery in their 80s than someone who might be 60 having had 2 strokes, open heart surgery, heavy smoker, overweight, and then you kind of stratify the two. Better candidate might be the one in the 80s.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So when you have, do you have support groups at your hospital that help each other, or is this pretty much with the physical therapist and the doctor and the team that you work with?
You know, actually we had a concept that I guess generically was called joint class. I think kind of where you're going with that. a group of individuals in the same boat who are maybe going to travel the same pathway. And I think that had some positives to it for sure. But now we have an assigned joint coordinator, Adam English is his name, and he actually serves as a single point person on a one-on-one. So you might be Adam and I might be a patient or vice versa. We're sitting like this. We're conversing anything and everything about arthritis. You want to see the implant? Well, here it is on a three-dimensional model. You want to know more about surgery? We might have a video to show you. And it's direct contact, so it could be 8 p.m. at night, you got a question, there's a direct line to Adam in this case, and hopefully we'll be able to attend to that right away. We give him some time to sleep, of course, but as soon as he can, he'll get back and take it from there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, how many surgeons do you have that in the orthopedic portion of your operation?
Right now, it's just myself and Dr. Eric Severson. We have Tom Lewandowski, physician's assistant, Derek Joyner, orthopedic physician's assistant, and many, many support staff, too many to name, but all very, very helpful and good. But the two surgeons are Dr. Severson and myself right now.
How complicated are rotator cuff surgeries or the shoulder surgeries? That seems to me to have a lot more stuff going on in it. Would that be more complex?
It can be, but same thing with technology progressing. I think most times the concept of what's known as arthroscopic surgery is at hand, but it's also interesting that some of the surgeries that really aren't joint replacement surgeries can still reap the benefit of everything we're doing for joint replacement, talking about the medications we give, the concept of how recovery may go. So it's starting to expand to other areas of our field as well, the rotator cuff surgery that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. So that one historically and long ago has been what we would call an outpatient surgery. But I think it kind of gets a rap in the general public as one kind of hard to recover from because it hurts. Same thing. If we can control pain and let that experience be better, I think the overall experience will be better, and outcomes have been very good.
I've never had any of those surgeries, but I imagine they all hurt a little bit.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, it's an invasion to the body, but
sure.
Same thing. If we can kind of help that pathway be less of pain, overall it's going to be perceived better, and it probably will work out better.
It's I just think of the years ago when I was a kid, the people who had surgeries like we're talking about would be in hospitals for forever, and it probably was doing more disservice to not having them out and moving around than what you're doing today, because it's just amazing to think that somebody can walk out of there a day after a surgery like that and get on a regimen.
Yeah, that was pretty dogmatic. You know, maybe it was 3 days as a common stay, and for that matter, some people would check into a care facility feeling like they needed the extra help. But as the saying goes, there's no place like home. It's your own bed, your own diet. Probably the rest of your bodily function returns toward normal that way. And most hospitals also treat infectious diseases. Not that we're fearful for anyone coming in is going to get that, but again, the home is where you're used to it, and I think everything really normalizes much faster. The satisfaction's higher at home.
Not that you would ever have this issue, but I'm sure there's some places where there's rejection from surgeries. What are some of the things that cause rejection, and how do you deal with that when you find that to be a problem?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a literal rejection like it might be an organ transplantation, for example, because obviously the parts we're putting in there are inert. I've one time heard the concept of question asked, I have a nickel allergy, and some of these metals we use have extremely small trace amounts of nickel, but that would be the extreme rare case. To date, I don't think I'm aware of personally any type of case where I would have been suspicious for the implant as the cause for the outcome being poor. We, of course, watch for things like actual infection with bacteria and stuff like that. It's a very it's a rare complication.
But it could happen in any surgery.
Right, and I guess in some sense that might be considered rejection because the body doesn't want that in there. But I don't know if it's a direct response to the materials more so than other extraneous factors coming into play.
I would think that someone has severe arthritis in both knees and they have those replaced, it must be like being born again to be able to get rid of that extreme pain, because I'm guessing that it was extreme pain that went through the surgery.
You know, we experienced that. I had a lady come to the office literally in tears, and on the younger side, I think around 50 or so, but one by one the knees were replaced, and it was truly, as you said, a brand new lease on life, so much so moving that it was a tearful moment. So I think for many people it's that very critical phase. Do I go on in life keeping my natural body parts though they're failing me, or do I take this new step, be somewhere better, and really enjoy life a lot better? And it can be very moving.
Well, like you said, it's really all about the comfort of life, being able to live in the least amount of pain that you can get by with, I would guess.
Right.
When a person wants to come to your organization and find out about surgery, how do they do that? How do they approach you?
Well, again, it might be Adam that we talked about would be a first-line contact. We have phone numbers, of course, direct to the Minnesota Center for Orthopedics, and our staff will direct to the right place, and conversation might begin with that. And Adam can sort of gauge where they've been and what the needs might be, and either affiliate with myself or Dr. Severson and kind of take from there, and then from there we can kind of lay out the entire program, the non-operative care of things, and if need be, the operative care of things, and sometimes they kind of come in sequence. Start the pathway with the non-operative stuff, and if that should not work out over time, they maybe already are counseled on what surgery might be when their time may come.
What do you said there's a lot of new development in the technology equipment that you're using here, but when you go to your national conferences, I'm sure you go to national conferences, are you seeing new trends emerging in this area that haven't hit our areas yet?
No, actually, I think what we're able to provide is current, and there's really nothing we haven't seen or done in our arena at the Minnesota Center for Orthopedics. A lot of people in the public may know about computer-guided surgery or things along those lines, navigational things, creating surgical tools and implants specific for the body, and I think they definitely have a role to help. But I guess we are fortunate that we have the ability to do that. Our administration is very supportive of what we do. And so I don't think there's a thing out there that we haven't seen or tried.
Cutting edge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the program. We're out of time. We went really fast.
Yes.
And I would be very comfortable coming to you to have surgery on my knees. You're very, very well spoken and very confident young man.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
Thank you.
Been my
Appreciate
pleasure.
it very much.
You bet.
You've been watching Lakeland Currents, where we're talking about what you're talking about. I'm Ray Gildow. So long until next time.